In the quiet countryside of early 19th century England, life moved according to rules that seemed fixed and unquestionable. Family background mattered. Wealth shaped opportunity. Good manners could open doors, while a damaged reputation could close them forever. For young women especially, the future often depended not on education or profession, but on marriage. A good marriage could bring security, respect, and comfort. A poor one could bring unhappiness for life. And for those who did not marry at all, uncertainty lingered over every passing year. It is inside this delicate and demanding world that Jane Austen begins Pride and Prejudice, a novel that appears, at first glance, to be a romance, but gradually reveals itself as something far richer, a story about judgment, misunderstanding, pride, vulnerability, family pressure, and the slow, painful work of learning to see another person clearly. At the center of the story is the Bennet family, who live at Longbourn, a comfortable but not extravagant estate in Hertfordshire. Mr. Bennet, the father, is intelligent and quietly amusing, though often detached from the chaos around him. Mrs. Bennet, by contrast, is emotional, restless, and consumed by one dominant concern: she must see her daughters married. She speaks, worries, hopes, and schemes with endless energy. Between them are 5 daughters, each with her own personality, each facing the same social reality. Jane, the eldest, is gentle, beautiful, and kind-hearted. Elizabeth, the second, is lively, sharp-minded, and independent. Mary is serious and bookish. Kitty is easily influenced. Lydia, the youngest, is flirtatious, impulsive, and delighted by attention. Their home is full of laughter, nerves, gossip, and unpredictability. Yet beneath the ordinary rhythm of family life lies a real problem. Because the Bennet estate is entailed away from the female line, none of the daughters can inherit it. Their future is uncertain, and Mrs. Bennet never lets anyone forget it. One day, the quiet routine of the neighborhood is interrupted by exciting news. Netherfield Park, a fine estate nearby, has been rented by a wealthy young gentleman named Charles Bingley. He is unmarried, rich, and of agreeable reputation. To Mrs. Bennet, this is not merely interesting news, it is a possibility, almost a blessing. She instantly imagines one of her daughters becoming mistress of Netherfield. Her excitement fills the household. She insists that Mr. Bennet must visit the new arrival, because in their world, introductions matter, and without a proper introduction, no acquaintance can begin. Mr. Bennet, who often enjoys teasing his wife, pretends indifference before quietly making the visit anyway. When the truth is revealed, Mrs. Bennet's irritation turns instantly into delight. Plans, expectations, and speculation begin to swirl. A new man has arrived, and with him comes the promise of social movement, romantic opportunity, and perhaps a change in the fate of the Bennet sisters. The neighborhood soon gathers at a public ball in Meryton, where everyone is eager to meet Mr. Bingley. The occasion is full of music, movement, chatter, and the careful rituals of polite society. Bingley immediately makes a favorable impression. He is cheerful, open, and willing to dance. He laughs easily, speaks kindly, and seems to enjoy the company around him without reservation. During the course of the evening, he dances twice with Jane Bennet, a clear sign of preference that does not go unnoticed. Jane's beauty and sweetness attract him at once, and his admiration appears genuine. But Bingley does not arrive alone. With him comes his friend, Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy, a man of far greater wealth and higher social standing. Darcy is handsome, tall, and distinguished, but his behavior quickly cools the admiration his appearance first inspires. Unlike Bingley, he does not smile easily. He dances little, speaks sparingly, and seems to hold himself apart from the crowd, as if the room offers him nothing worthy of interest. It is during this first ball that one of the story's most important moments takes place. Bingley, noticing that Darcy is standing alone, encourages him to dance and points out Elizabeth Bennet as a possible partner. Darcy glances at her and replies that she is tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt him. Elizabeth overhears the remark. Though she laughs about it afterward, the insult leaves a sharp impression. It confirms her first sense of Darcy as proud, cold, and unnecessarily disdainful. For Elizabeth, who possesses both intelligence and a quick sense of humor, the remark becomes a story to repeat with amusement. Yet beneath her playful tone lies wounded pride. First impressions matter deeply, especially when they humiliate. Darcy, meanwhile, probably thinks little of the moment, unaware that his careless words have already shaped how Elizabeth will see him. In this brief exchange, the central tension of the novel begins. A single insult, delivered with arrogance, becomes the seed from which misunderstanding, resentment, and emotional complication will grow. Elizabeth Bennet is unlike many heroines of her time. She is not the most traditionally beautiful of the Bennet sisters, but she possesses something equally powerful: intelligence, confidence, and a lively understanding of human nature. She enjoys conversation more than display, wit more than flattery, and sincerity more than fashionable manners. She is close to Jane, deeply affectionate toward her family despite their faults, and unafraid to form judgments of her own. Yet Elizabeth has weaknesses as well. Her confidence in her perceptions can become overconfidence. Her wit can slip into mockery. Her dislike of foolishness can sometimes make her too quick to dismiss people. She prides herself on seeing clearly, on understanding character, on reading motives beneath words. That makes her very perceptive, but it also makes her vulnerable to a particular kind of error. Once she decides what someone is, she may stop looking for evidence that contradicts her conclusion. This strength and this flaw will define much of her journey. While Elizabeth develops her opinion of Darcy, Jane and Bingley begin to grow closer. Their attraction is not dramatic or intense, but easy, sincere, and natural. Bingley admires Jane's beauty, but more than that, he responds to her gentleness, grace, and calm kindness. Jane, who always thinks well of others and rarely displays strong emotion openly, is equally pleased by Bingley's cheerful and attentive nature. Their meetings at dinners and gatherings reinforce the impression that they are well suited. Even Elizabeth, who is careful in her observations, sees that Bingley's affection is unmistakable. Mrs. Bennet, of course, sees marriage approaching and can scarcely contain her excitement. Yet there is a subtle problem beneath the surface. Jane's manner is modest and reserved. Her feelings, though real, are not displayed with dramatic openness. To someone who understands her, this is simply her nature. But to someone less perceptive or more suspicious, such reserve may be mistaken for indifference. And soon, others begin to watch this growing relationship with interfering eyes. Around Bingley stand influences that matter more than he realizes. His sisters, along with Darcy, form the social circle through which much of his judgment is filtered. Miss Bingley and Mrs. Hurst are fashionable, elegant, and highly conscious of status. They are polite when necessary, but their politeness often hides snobbery. They look down on the Bennet family for their lower connections, their less refined relations, and especially the embarrassing behavior of Mrs. Bennet and the younger girls. They are willing to admire Jane's beauty, but they do not think the Bennet family truly worthy of intimate connection. Elizabeth notices this. She recognizes the artificial sweetness of Miss Bingley's manner and understands that social charm often conceals contempt. Darcy, though more honest than the Bingley sisters, shares some of their concerns. He sees the lack of restraint in parts of the Bennet household and judges it severely. Already, the novel begins to ask one of its central questions: how much should family, status, and social polish matter when weighing the value of a person. An opportunity soon arises for Jane to spend more time near Bingley. Invited to dine at Netherfield, she is encouraged by her mother to ride there on horseback, despite threatening weather. The plan is clear enough. If it rains, Jane may be forced to stay the night. It does rain, and Jane becomes ill. Elizabeth, genuinely concerned, walks several miles through mud to visit her sister. Her arrival at Netherfield, with her skirts dirty and her appearance less than fashionable, is judged harshly by the Bingley sisters. Yet Bingley himself is attentive, and Darcy, despite outward reserve, is struck by Elizabeth's devotion to Jane and the brightness of her eyes. During Elizabeth's stay, small conversations and observations deepen the strange tension between her and Darcy. He begins to see her as something far more compelling than he first supposed. Elizabeth, however, remains convinced of his pride and continues to interpret his seriousness as arrogance. The atmosphere at Netherfield becomes one of quiet, emotional undercurrents, where attraction grows in one direction and prejudice hardens in the other. Into the already complicated world of Longbourn comes another figure, Mr. Collins, a clergyman and cousin to the Bennet family. His importance lies not only in his absurd personality, but in the fact that he will inherit Longbourn upon Mr. Bennet's death. Mr. Collins is pompous, self-important, and endlessly formal. He speaks in long-winded compliments, reveres rank with ridiculous intensity, and is especially devoted to his patroness, Lady Catherine de Bourgh, whose importance he never stops praising. He arrives with the stated intention of making peace with the Bennets, but quickly reveals another purpose. He wishes to marry one of the daughters. Believing this will make amends for the injustice of the entail, he first sets his sights on Jane, but when told she may soon be engaged, he turns at once to Elizabeth. Austen presents him with sharp humor, yet his presence also underscores the practical pressures women face. Marriage is not always about love. Often, it is about convenience, property, and protection from future insecurity. At the same time, the nearby militia regiment brings excitement to the younger Bennet sisters and the local community. Uniforms, flirtation, and novelty fill the social atmosphere. Among the officers, one man stands out immediately, George Wickham. He is handsome, charming, and effortless in company. Where Darcy is silent, Wickham is open. Where Darcy seems proud, Wickham seems warm and approachable. Elizabeth is immediately struck by the contrast. Wickham appears to possess the grace Darcy lacks, and his ease in conversation invites trust. Soon, he begins to share a history that ties him directly to Darcy. He tells Elizabeth that his father was managed unfairly by Darcy's late father, and that Darcy himself deprived him of a valuable living that had once been intended for him. Wickham presents himself as a man wronged by pride and cruelty, and because his story aligns perfectly with Elizabeth's existing opinion of Darcy, she is ready to believe every word. It is one of Austen's most subtle observations. We are often most easily deceived when the lie confirms what we already wish to believe. Wickham's story settles into Elizabeth's mind with remarkable ease. It explains Darcy's coldness. It justifies her dislike. It turns personal insult into moral judgment. Now she does not merely think Darcy unpleasant, she believes him actively unjust. Yet the important detail is not only that Wickham lies, but that Elizabeth receives the lie eagerly. She asks few hard questions. She does not pause to consider that an agreeable manner is not proof of honesty. Nor does she examine how conveniently Wickham's account supports her resentment. Austen is not interested only in external deception. She is equally interested in self-deception, in the quiet way people shape evidence to match desire. Elizabeth, for all her intelligence, becomes vulnerable because she is too pleased with her own discernment. In thinking herself superior to social foolishness, she fails to notice a subtler danger, the pleasure of being confirmed in one's prejudice. Mr. Collins soon carries out his plan and proposes marriage to Elizabeth. The scene is one of the novel's most uncomfortable and revealing moments. He assumes she must accept him. He praises his own suitability, lists the practical advantages of the match, and refers more than once to the wishes of Lady Catherine. Even Elizabeth's refusal fails, at first, to convince him. He imagines that modest young women always reject a first proposal out of delicacy, and that perseverance will secure the answer he wants. Elizabeth must refuse him repeatedly and clearly before he finally accepts the reality. The scene is humorous, but it also reveals how little many women are allowed to mean by no when marriage is concerned. For Elizabeth, the refusal is an assertion of principle. She will not marry without respect or affection, even if the match offers practical security. In making that decision, she distinguishes herself sharply from the expectations of her world. Elizabeth's closest friend, Charlotte Lucas, sees the matter very differently. Charlotte is sensible, kind, and less romantic than Elizabeth. At 27, with limited beauty and few prospects, she understands how narrow her opportunities are. So when Mr. Collins turns his attention to her, she accepts him. Elizabeth is shocked and disappointed. She cannot imagine choosing such a man knowingly. To her, Charlotte's decision feels like a surrender of dignity and happiness. But Charlotte does not seek romance. She seeks stability, a household of her own, and protection from dependence. Austen refuses to treat this choice simply as foolish or cynical. Instead, she shows the harsh logic behind it. Charlotte's marriage is not a triumph, but it is intelligible. Through her, the novel broadens. It becomes not just a story about ideal love, but an examination of the compromises women make in a society that offers them so few independent paths. Then comes a painful blow. Bingley suddenly leaves Netherfield and returns to London, apparently with no immediate plan to come back. Jane is hurt, though she tries to hide the depth of her feelings. Bingley's sisters write with cool politeness and make it clear that they hope he will form a more suitable connection elsewhere, perhaps even with Darcy's sister, Georgiana. Mrs. Bennet is outraged. Elizabeth is troubled and suspicious. To her, it seems impossible that Bingley's affection for Jane could disappear so quickly unless someone had influenced him. And she suspects Darcy. Jane, however, remains generous, suggesting there may be innocent reasons and refusing to accuse anyone too readily. Their different responses reveal their characters beautifully. Jane protects others from blame whenever possible. Elizabeth moves more swiftly toward indignation when she believes injustice has been done. The separation from Bingley deepens Elizabeth's anger toward Darcy and strengthens her conviction that he is not merely proud, but actively interfering in the happiness of others. While Elizabeth's resentment grows, Darcy experiences the opposite movement. He finds himself increasingly attached to her. Her intelligence, self-possession, and lively conversation unsettle his assumptions. She is not polished in the fashionable sense, nor is her family situation ideal, yet she possesses a vitality and honesty that draw him more powerfully than he expects. Darcy struggles against this attraction. His class pride, his awareness of social inequality, and his concern about the Bennet family's improprieties all make him resist. But resistance only reveals the strength of the feeling. Austen handles this quietly, not through dramatic declarations, but through observation, glances, and altered behavior. Darcy begins as a man who dismisses Elizabeth. Gradually, almost against his own will, he becomes a man who cannot stop thinking about her. Yet, because he does not fully overcome his pride before speaking, the love he has developed will soon be expressed in a deeply flawed way. Elizabeth later visits Charlotte and Mr. Collins at Hunsford, where Mr. Collins enjoys the patronage of Lady Catherine de Bourgh. There, circumstances bring her again into Darcy's company because he is visiting his aunt, Lady Catherine. Elizabeth notices his strange behavior. At times he seems withdrawn, at others, he seeks her out. The tension builds quietly until, at last, Darcy proposes. But the proposal is anything but graceful. He confesses his love passionately, yet he does so while emphasizing the inferiority of her connections and the struggle he has undergone in loving her despite her family and status. Everything in his speech tells Elizabeth that he loves her, but also that he still feels himself above her. It is, in a sense, a sincere declaration poisoned by pride. Elizabeth, already furious over Jane and convinced of Wickham's story, rejects him at once. Her refusal is not timid. It is fierce, honest, and wounding. She accuses him of ungentlemanly conduct, of separating Bingley from Jane, and of ruining Wickham's prospects. The next morning, Darcy hands Elizabeth a letter. In it, he answers the two great accusations against him. First, he admits that he did encourage Bingley to separate from Jane, because he believed Jane did not truly return Bingley's affection. Her calm reserve convinced him that she felt only mild regard. He also confesses that he considered the impropriety of her family. This is painful, but not wholly false. Then he turns to Wickham, and here the ground beneath Elizabeth begins to shift. Darcy explains that Wickham was given substantial support by his father, but squandered it. Later, when offered the church living originally intended for him, Wickham refused it in exchange for money, only to demand more later. Worst of all, he attempted to elope with Darcy's young sister, Georgiana, not from love, but for her fortune. The letter is calm, detailed, and devastating. It does not ask for pity. It asks only to be believed. For Elizabeth, reading it is like watching a carefully built picture of reality begin to collapse. Few moments in the novel are more important than Elizabeth's response to Darcy's letter. At first, she resists it. She wants to doubt him, to protect the conclusions she has already formed. But the evidence is too coherent, and gradually she is forced into a painful recognition. She had been blind, not because she lacked intelligence, but because she trusted it too much. She sees that she judged Darcy from wounded vanity, admired Wickham from pleasing manners, and took pride in discernment without truly testing it. This is the beginning of real humility. It is not simply that she changes her mind about Darcy, she changes her mind about herself. She realizes that she is capable of error, even serious error, and that self-knowledge requires more than cleverness. It requires honesty. In this moment, Elizabeth begins to grow. Her prejudice has not vanished instantly, but it has been exposed. Once exposed, it can no longer govern her so easily. Later, while traveling with her aunt and uncle, the Gardiners, Elizabeth visits Pemberley, Darcy's estate, believing him absent. The visit becomes another turning point. Pemberley itself makes a profound impression. It is beautiful without being gaudy, grand yet tasteful, a place of natural order and quiet dignity. Elizabeth cannot help thinking that to be mistress of such a place would be no small thing. More important still is what she hears from the housekeeper, who describes Darcy as generous, responsible, and beloved by his servants. This testimony carries weight precisely because it is not designed to flatter Elizabeth. Then, unexpectedly, Darcy appears. Elizabeth is mortified, but Darcy behaves with surprising civility and warmth. Instead of coldness or resentment, he shows courtesy to her relatives, especially to the Gardiners, whose lower social standing earlier might have made him disdainful. He introduces her to Georgiana and seems genuinely eager to repair her opinion of him. Elizabeth begins to see not just that she was wrong before, but that Darcy himself has changed. Pride is giving way to something gentler. What moves Elizabeth most is not a grand speech, but a pattern of conduct. Darcy is now attentive without being arrogant, considerate without display, and respectful toward the very people he once might have judged beneath him. She sees him act, and through action she learns more than argument could teach. This is one of Austen's quiet moral points. Character is best known not through self-description, but through consistent behavior. Elizabeth's feelings begin to soften into admiration. She does not yet call it love, but she recognizes that the man before her is not the man she believed him to be. He is capable of self-correction, and so is she. Their relationship, which once rested on wounded pride and hasty judgment, now begins to rest on something more durable, the possibility of mutual understanding. Just as the story seems to be moving toward clarity, disaster strikes. Lydia Bennet, the youngest and least restrained of the sisters, runs away with Wickham. At first, the family fears she has eloped with him, but soon the truth becomes worse. They are not married, and there is no immediate sign that Wickham intends to marry her at all. In the social world of the novel, this is catastrophic. Lydia's reputation may be destroyed permanently, but the danger extends beyond her. The scandal threatens every Bennet sister. If one daughter is publicly disgraced, the others may become undesirable in marriage as well. Elizabeth is horrified. Her distress is sharpened by one bitter thought. If only she had exposed Wickham's true character earlier, perhaps Lydia might have been protected. Here the consequences of foolishness, vanity, and concealment come painfully into focus. What had once been flirtation and entertainment now reveals its serious cost. The crisis throws the entire Bennet household into confusion. Mrs. Bennet collapses into hysterics. Mr. Bennet, who has too often retreated into ironic detachment, is forced into painful action and self-reproach. Jane tries to steady the family with quiet strength. Elizabeth suffers not only fear for Lydia, but shame, regret, and the painful awareness that Darcy will now think even worse of her family. When she unexpectedly meets him again and tells him what has happened, she assumes the disaster has ended any possibility of future connection between them. If her family was already socially embarrassing, this scandal seems impossible to overcome. Darcy listens with sympathy, but soon leaves, and Elizabeth interprets his departure as natural and final. The fragile hope that had begun to grow within her seems crushed. The novel, which has moved through wit and emotional tension, now enters one of its darkest passages. Relief eventually arrives in the form of astonishing news. Lydia and Wickham have been found, and they are to be married after all. The family is saved from total disgrace, though the match is hardly desirable. At first, the arrangements appear mysterious. Wickham is irresponsible, in debt, and not naturally inclined toward honorable conduct. Why then has he agreed? Only later does Elizabeth learn the truth. Darcy quietly sought out Wickham, negotiated with him, paid his debts, and arranged the marriage, ensuring Lydia's future and preserving the Bennet family's reputation. He does all this without seeking praise, and Elizabeth discovers it only through indirect means. This act transforms her understanding completely. Darcy has not merely spoken well or behaved courteously. He has acted decisively, generously, and at personal inconvenience for the sake of her family and ultimately for her. It is impossible now to maintain the old image of him as selfish and proud. His love has become visible through sacrifice. What separates Darcy from Wickham becomes undeniable. Both men are well-born, intelligent, and capable of polished manners when needed. But one pursues appearance without principle, while the other, despite faults of pride and reserve, possesses integrity at the core. Wickham can charm a room while betraying those who trust him. Darcy can appear severe while quietly doing what is right. Austen's contrast is precise and moral without being simplistic. She shows how easily society mistakes charm for goodness and awkwardness for vice. Elizabeth herself made this mistake, and part of her maturity lies in learning to distinguish pleasing surfaces from reliable substance. Darcy's secret help for Lydia does more than win Elizabeth's gratitude. It reveals a character rooted in responsibility, loyalty, and care. This is the moment when admiration deepens into love, not because he becomes richer or more elegant, but because his inner worth is finally visible. After Lydia's marriage, the story begins to move once more toward happiness. Bingley returns to Netherfield, and this time he does not allow himself to be led away so easily. Whether through his own reflection or Darcy's changed influence, he comes back ready to act on his feelings. He visits Longbourn frequently, and the old warmth between him and Jane quickly revives. Jane, as always, is modest in expression, but her happiness is evident to those who know her. At last, Bingley proposes, and Jane accepts. This engagement brings genuine joy to the family, especially to Elizabeth, who has long wished for her sister's happiness. It also casts new light on Darcy. Elizabeth now knows that he has admitted his role in the earlier separation and regrets it. The restoration of Jane and Bingley's relationship suggests that some errors, once recognized, can be repaired. The novel does not deny pain, but it allows room for correction, return, and second chances. Yet one final obstacle remains. Lady Catherine de Bourgh, Darcy's formidable aunt, hears rumors that he may intend to marry Elizabeth. Outraged by the idea, she arrives at Longbourn to confront her directly. Lady Catherine embodies rank-conscious arrogance in its purest form. She believes family status should govern marriage absolutely, and she treats Elizabeth as if the very possibility of such a match were offensive. She demands that Elizabeth promise never to accept Darcy if he proposes. Elizabeth refuses. Calm but firm, she will not submit to bullying, nor will she deny herself on the grounds of aristocratic pride. The scene is crucial because it proves that Elizabeth has retained her independence even as her feelings have changed. She does not become humble by becoming weak. She has learned self-knowledge, not self-erasure. Lady Catherine leaves furious, but her interference has the opposite effect from what she intended. By carrying news of Elizabeth's response back to Darcy, she helps convince him that Elizabeth's feelings may no longer be entirely against him. At last, Darcy and Elizabeth meet again in a more open spirit. This time there is no prideful language about inferior connections, no sharp anger, no defensive misunderstanding. Darcy asks if her feelings remain what they were when he first proposed. If they do, he says, he will remain silent forever. The humility of this moment matters as much as the love within it. Darcy has learned not only to love Elizabeth, but to respect her freedom. Elizabeth, in turn, speaks honestly. She thanks him for his actions regarding Lydia and lets him see that her feelings have changed completely. Their understanding is now mutual. What began in insult and resentment ends in openness and trust. The second proposal succeeds not because the circumstances are more convenient, but because both characters have grown. Pride has softened. Prejudice has dissolved. Affection has been tested by truth and proved worthy. The announcement of Elizabeth's engagement creates a mixture of astonishment, delight, and comic reaction. Jane is overjoyed and completely understanding. Mr. Bennet, though surprised, quickly recognizes Darcy's worth and his daughter's attachment. His approval is thoughtful and affectionate. Mrs. Bennet, once she recovers from the shock of learning that Elizabeth is to marry so wealthy a man, becomes extravagantly pleased. Her earlier complaints about Darcy vanish almost instantly beneath visions of carriages, status, and prosperity. The reactions are amusing, but they also feel earned. Happiness in Austen is rarely simple or sentimental. It comes threaded with irony, family absurdity, and practical considerations. Yet the emotional core remains sincere. Elizabeth and Darcy have arrived at one another honestly, through struggle, reflection, and changed understanding, not by accident or convenience. The title of the novel now reveals its full meaning. Darcy began with pride of rank, judgment, and self-control. Elizabeth began with prejudice born of wounded vanity, quick impressions, and confidence in her own interpretation. Neither fault belongs to one person alone. Both are human weaknesses that distort how we see others. Austen does not punish her characters for having flaws. Instead, she allows them to confront those flaws, suffer because of them, and grow beyond them. This is why the novel endures. It is not simply a romance in which two attractive people overcome obstacles. It is a moral and emotional education. Love becomes possible only after each person learns humility, honesty, and respect. What Pride and Prejudice leaves us with is larger than its love story. It reminds us that first impressions, however vivid, are often incomplete. It warns us that charm can mislead, that silence can be misread, and that confidence in our own judgment may hide serious blindness. At the same time, it offers hope. People can change. Misunderstandings can be corrected. Character can reveal itself over time. Elizabeth and Darcy do not become worthy of happiness because they were perfect from the beginning. They become worthy because they learn. They listen, reflect, admit wrong, and act with greater care. In that sense, the novel remains deeply modern. Its world may be shaped by dances, estates, and formal visits, but its emotional truth is timeless. We are still proud. We are still prejudiced. And we still need the courage to see others and ourselves more clearly.